Welcome to Ageless by Rescu. This podcast is devoted to exploring the science of rejuvenation, uncovering the most trusted experts, the must-have products, innovations, and technology in the field of vitality, aesthetics, new beauty, and cosmetic enhancement. I'm so delighted to introduce you to Tim Brown, Australia's foremost meditation expert. And we have a fun and interesting background story, Tim. Welcome to the show, Ageless by Rescu.
Thanks, Bahad. So nice to be there. And we've known each other for 37 years now, I think you were just saying. And, we went to primary school in Canberra all those years ago. So to sit here with you today is just amazing.
I think it's really interesting. It always reminds me of that incredible saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Yeah.
And, our friendship, as you said, dates back to when we were 10 years old. We were in year 4, year 5, year 6 or something like that together. And then you had a sports career.
Yeah.
And in that time, you discovered that healing and reinvention and rejuvenation is more than just a physical commitment. Yeah. So I'd love for you to share with us a little bit about your background, and then I'm going to ask you some questions about the mind-body connection, how meditation is truly a cornerstone of rejuvenation and agelessness that we need to consider adding to our basket of tools.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, you and I were in Canberra in the mid 80s. And then I came to school here in Sydney and played a lot of rugby, got right into my rugby in my teenage years. And that was really my focus. Meditation was so far from my interest. It was not vaguely on my radar. Went to university and studied agricultural economics and ended up living in Uzbekistan in the former Soviet, just on the Afghan border for 3 years. Involved in growing cotton actually in the former Soviet. And so I did that for a few years, and the pressure of that and the demands of that had a huge impact on me. I came back to Australia. It's kind of time to settle down, grow up, get a job, all those kinds of things, start being responsible. And the pressures of that really took its toll on me. And I found myself kind of the stress and the pressure and the tension of that and the impact of that. And I was really wrestling with that. I was probably drinking too much and doing other naughty things in my 20s, or researching a few other methods to feeling relaxed and at ease, I think, as we all did in those days. And I was very fortunate to be introduced to my teacher, a guy called Tom Knowles.
Who I also know, which is really interesting, because when we tic-tac-toe our history, it's not just that we've known each other, but I know your teacher, Tom Knowles. I met him through one of my mentors, John McGrath, and Tom was John's meditation teacher, and John really believes in meditation as part of his ability to, grow and think and expand his mind. And then Tom was your teacher.
Yes.
And his teacher was the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who...
That's right. That's Maharishi Mahesh Yogi there.
Yes.
That's Tom, my teacher, just there. And it's amazing how we've intertwined and crossed paths over the years. Yes, and John McGrath learnt with Tom right back at the beginning of his career, when the pressures of that were incredibly intense in developing his real estate business.
I'm going to just pick up on something that you just said.
Yeah.
It's about your coming to meditation and other very successful people that you work with, because your specialty, and not that, one person is different to another, but you have taught a lot of, well-known people, celebrities, CEOs, and it's almost like you're the last stop before falling off a cliff, or you're the first first responder when they have fallen off the cliff. And I want to talk about how we don't have to wait to fall off the cliff. And we've had this conversation before.
Yeah, look, I've taught over 6,000 people to meditate now over the last 20 years. I've been teaching Vedic meditation here in Sydney for that period of time. I taught my 3 kids to meditate at 4 years of age. They're now 15, 16, and 17. I teach a lot of kids to meditate, and mums and dads and kids and corporates and creatives and elite sports. I've worked with the Wallabies, members of the Australian Cricket team, AFL, men and women's, golfers, tennis players at elite levels, Olympians.
It's interesting you say sports stars, because one of the big, to me, meditation falls into the basket of biohacking,
Yes.
which is kind of a fancy word for, the mind-body connection, understanding how your physiology and your neurology works to maximize your human performance. And a lot of biohacking started and gained momentum in the sports medicine field. So it's really interesting that you've worked with elite athletes, and you were an athlete, and so you've kind of come to the mind-body connection via a pathway that's very body. Can I ask you, in that mind-body connection work that you've done, is meditation brought in as a healing modality, or is it a neurological modality that where meditation is brought in by the sports, the crew that support those elite athletes?
Yeah. So firstly, referring to me as an athlete, I think might be a stretch. I think we should clear that up first.
Gotcha.
But secondarily, I think, the pressures, and I've worked with elite athletes, the pressures on them these days, mentally, physically, emotionally, and then you add on, the social media and the pressure and the interest. It's an enormous undertaking, for anyone, and often young, people at their elite level are often very young and not necessarily have a lot of life experience generally, and thrown into the spotlight. It's an enormous pressure. We all kind of look at it from the outside and think it all looks very glamorous. It's incredibly challenging.
So where do they bring you in? Is it for healing, or is it for the emotion, the ability to manage the stress and the pressure?
All different sides. I mean, I've worked with a number of rugby players and rugby league players in around concussion. That's a real issue because the accumulator, it's not necessarily a concussive event, but it's the rigors of being physically battered week in, week out, week in, week out.
So is that like a trauma response? Is that what happens in the body?
Exactly right. And I've seen all kinds of things referred to as, I've had young athletes like that coming to me, and they're just not able to operate at the same levels that they were. And there's no specific event, but it's actually just the accumulation of stress, tension, and fatigue in the mind and body over time. And whether we're an elite athlete or being a mum or a dad or whatever, that's really the issue that I've seen over the years. It's not necessarily one particular event. It's that accumulation of stress and tension and fatigue over time that's the thief in the night. And we don't really, it's a bit like the credit card. It's a bit like, $50 here, $80 there, $100 there, like this. They're not big transactions, but then we get the bill in the mail, and all of a sudden we get the $5,000 credit card bill. And it's like, oh my God, this can't be right. I'm ringing the bank. They've made a mistake. And of course, the response is, Mr. Brown, I'll send you through the itemized version of that. And there's lunch, and there's the shoes, and there's the this, and there's the that.
And so in a physiological and a life respect, the debits are breakups, trauma, childhood issues, physiological deterioration, poor health. Those are all the debits, and then they add up.
They're all the little debits, and it's even the smaller part of that. I was watching a TED talk the other day. It was one of the world's leading neuroscientists, and he was saying someone living in a city anywhere in the world in 2020, 2021 is being exposed to the same levels of stimulus in one day that someone 200 years ago, which in the scheme of human brain and nervous system development is just blink of an eye. It's nothing. 200 years is nothing. Would have been exposed to in their whole lifetime. When you and I were kids in Canberra at primary school, no such thing as the internet. mobile phones, technology, computers, none of this existed 25 years ago.
And I consider myself young.
Yeah,
I still view myself as youthful, but you're right. Like, it wasn't long ago that all of this additional stimulus came into our lives and is in our kids' lives and is distracting and kind of breaking down the fiber of our, health and vitality.
Absolutely. And this is something that people forget. When I went traveling and went to live overseas in 1996, none of us had a mobile phone. No one had an email address. We were still sending postcards back to our parents in 1996. It's 25 years ago. This is, in the scheme of human brain and nervous system development, this is a blink of an eye. It's not even a blink of an eye. The third law of thermodynamics says that as you excite or overstimulate any system, it will naturally move towards a state of disorder and chaos. The opposite of that is also true, which is as you de-excite any system, it will naturally move towards a state of order. So the qualities of an orderly, conscious or neurophysiological state are clarity, creativity, energy, joyfulness, intelligence, and prints out as physical well-being. As you de-excite, an orderly conscious state will print out that way, mentally, physically, and emotionally. As you stimulate, and in fact, in these times in which the stimulus is just off the charts, and again, has happened in such a short period of time, then the accumulation of stress, tension, and fatigue in the mind and body will create overstimulation, which will move towards a state of disorder. And disorder presents in the mental, physical, and emotional state as a lack of clarity, lack of creativity, lack of energy, lethargy, lack of joyfulness, lack of intelligence, and physical lack of ease, which, if unchecked and unaddressed, will become dis-ease or aging, accelerated aging.
I want to pick up on both those aspects, because when I speak to anti-aging experts, we always talk about youth markers, and you've touched on the neurological and the emotional markers of youth, which are joyfulness, creativity, clarity, energy. I would add sexual energy to that as well, because those are all kind of youth markers. And then you talked about the physiological markers of youth, which are also energy, vitality, plumpness of skin, normal organ function, an absence of disease, and aging is disease. So I want to let's talk about the physiological and then go back to the neurological. What are some of the benefits and the cause and effect element that meditation can help with on a physiological aging paradigm? So what are the things that can, slow down things like going gray, losing hair, skin disorders like eczema, rosacea, wrinkling, loss of hydration? What are some of the things, what are the connections between meditation as a regular practice and physiological aging? Because people love a benefit. Once you attach something to a benefit that people are seeking, suddenly meditation every day is not so hard.
Absolutely, because it takes time. So it's got to deliver. Otherwise, why do it, right? It needs to be very, very tangible. And I think it's a great question. Very interestingly, it's been very well documented that the first three things the body will start to deactivate as stress, tension, fatigue gently builds in the mind and body. And again, it doesn't need to necessarily be anything traumatic, although trauma and big events, will accelerate that process. But just the rigors of day-to-day life, living in the world that we are living in, where that escalation in demand has happened so quickly, just that, then you add trauma and extraordinary situations like we're operating in now with COVID. What that does is, as that stress, tension, fatigue builds, the first three things the body will start to deactivate are well noted and well documented. Are the digestive system will start to shut down, the reproductive system and hormone balancing will deactivate, and the memory center of the brain. They're the first three areas that, as a simple resource management issue, there's a hierarchy of needs in the nervous system. breathing's fairly important. Heartbeat's fairly critical, and then certain organs. There's a hierarchy of needs. And so what happens is as stress, tension, fatigue builds, energy depletes in the nervous system, the floor starts to come up and functionality starts to drop off the list. So the body says, these things are absolutely key and critical. These things are, important, but not as critical. So if energy is depleting in the nervous system, then the nervous system simply as a resource management issue says, don't worry about these things, particularly digestion, hormone balancing, and reproductive system and the memory center of the brain. It says, don't worry about those. We'll get back to those later. We're focusing on these things. We're in the flight-fight response. And in that flight-fight response, the body produces adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol, coagulants, antibacterial production, and oxygenation of muscles. They're the key things if we're running and fighting for our life. Digesting anything, reproducing, hormone balancing, and remembering anything from the past are completely redundant. Wow. And the body will take the energy out of those areas, reallocate it into these key critical areas. Now, that's very handy if you're being chased by a bear. Not very handy if you're trying to relate to people and deal with kids and work and be creative. And that's what we're finding is people are getting caught in the flight-fight response, and it just creeps up on them. I call it frog in the potting. You would have heard that dreadful experiment where they throw the frog in the pot, in the hot water, the frog jumps out. They then cool the water down, pop the frog in, and then turn the temperature up generally, and the frog just sits and boils in the pot. It's a horrible thing. But, this is what we're seeing is that there's a lot of what I call frog in the potting going on out there. And that incremental, functionality falls off the edge, and people standardize and normalize that. Now, all skin issues come out of the gut. We know that. Eczema, psoriasis, accelerated aging, all of those kinds of things come out of the gut. The skin is a reflection of gut health.
It's the biggest organ. So absolutely, yes.
It's our interface with the world. It's the biggest organ in the interface with the world, and it's directly correlated to the gut. Now, stress builds, body shuts down the digestive system. What it will often do is flush with acid, because the body, if it's in the flight-fight response, it's get everything out of the gut because you need to be nimble and quick to get away from that bear. And so now the gut goes acidic, and that creates all kinds of gut issues and leaky gut, IBS, all these things, huge issues around allergies, all of that comes round and is a function of the gut not being attended to. Now, you can drink spring water and eat organic. If your body has shut down the digestive system because it's saying I haven't got the energy to attend to that functionality, then you can do whatever. You can put all the supplements you like in, but if that body is not activating that area, it's not going to make much difference. We've got to get the body opening up its repertoire again. And this is where meditation comes into play. If we can start to settle the mind, relax the body, the nervous system turns off the adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol, turns on the serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, all that high-grade well-being healing chemistry, the nervous system comes out of the flight-fight response and into what we call the stay and play response.
I love the stay and play response. Here to play. Here to stay and play, Tim.
Stay and play, stay and play. The other term we give this is rest and digest. And when the mind and body is in that modality, it turns the digestive system back on, turns reproductive system back on, turns memory center back on. So many issues around gut, around hormone imbalances and reproductive issues. I do a lot of work with women and men that are having issues with fertility. I do an enormous amount of work in that area. We've had some amazing results there. And they've used the medical system, which is so wonderful, and checked out the plumbing. All the plumbing's good.
Yeah.
And if people aren't then, they're still having issues with fertility, more often than not, it's stress, because the body has shut down the reproductive system, saying it's not safe to bring, life into the world. And so the body will shut down the reproductive system. We're seeing enormous issues with Alzheimer's and dementia. That's very simply lock the body in the flight fight response for extended periods of time, the memory center of the brain gets deactivated. And we've got people that are fully functioning, their organs fully functioning, everything, and they have got no idea who they are. And this is dementia and Alzheimer's.
Which is aging.
Which is
Which is
accelerated
one of the,
aging.
absolutely. You know, there's that saying, you get the face that you deserve. And it's kind of a cruel saying, but it's interesting in light of this conversation, because I do believe that we wear our memories, our experiences, our traumas, our joys on our face, on our skin. And I do believe that trauma is trapped in the body, and it could be anywhere in your body. And you've seen people who've had something terrible happen, or a shock, and you know, the whole concept of going gray overnight, or that sudden, like, accelerated aging. And then similarly, you see people who've, you know, had an incredibly unhealthy lifestyle. They've, you know, been partying, drinking, lots of cocaine, and which is, you know, really quite a symptomatic aspect of life in the fast lane. And then that same person will go away, either, you know, go into rehab or a 12-step, or literally just unplug from that lifestyle and go back to basics and introduce, you know, meditation, healing modalities. And they literally come out looking like they've gone to the mountain and seen the burning bush. Like they de-age. It's possible. It's actually possible.
The body is a printout of consciousness. It is literally a facsimile of consciousness. Just like you type something on a computer and then you hit print, and a facsimile of what's on the screen comes out of the printer. This physical body is literally a printout of consciousness. This is the view of the Vedic worldview, the knowledge base from which this comes, the technique of meditation that I teach. The body is literally a printout of consciousness. And, you know, I think back to skin, it's a very interesting one. We all know that when someone gets a fright, if you frighten someone, they go white. The reason for that is the body goes into the flight fight response. The first thing, one of the other things the body will do is it will retract blood from the outer capillaries of the skin, so that if we get cut in running and fighting, that we don't bleed to death. And so this is why someone goes white when they get a fright. Now, when we're loading this stress, tension, and fatigue gently like that, what the body will do is it will draw the blood away from the outer capillaries of the skin. And what happens is then those outer layers of the skin don't get nourished. All the blood and nutrients and minerals and all of that doesn't get to the outer layer of the skin. And this will cause accelerated physical aging. And it's also where eczema, psoriasis, and all those things, because those outer layers aren't getting all that lovely nutrients. And so the bacteria on the skin gets a hole. It's not being addressed by those inner nutrients. So this is what we see. And in fact, we've seen it in meditators, is when people meditate, they relax, that blood will come back to the outer capillary of their skin. And you quite often, meditators have a rosy look about them.
Absolutely.
On a more extreme level. And they don't, one of the effects of that is that they look younger than their years. As you and I both know, there's biological age and there's chronological age. Someone can be chronologically, 40, they've gone around the, sun 40 times, but they can have a biological age of 25 or 55. So those two things are completely independent. We've all got a chronological age and a biological age. And those two things can be completely different.
Tim, one of the things that I find really fascinating, and I've experimented this on myself, I learned meditation when I was 17, just before I turned 18. My father has been meditating since his 20s, when he lived in France, and he was doing his master's and PhD in a language he didn't know, and had an enormous amount of pressure and stress. And someone introduced him to transcendental meditation, which is like Vedic meditation, mantra based. And he has been meditating, for 50 odd years. And before I turned 18, he took me in Canberra to learn meditation, and I was given a mantra. And just shortly before my 18th birthday, I had my first surgical procedure, which was rhinoplasty, a nose job. purely for vanity. And I was in hospital, and I don't know if you know anything about nose jobs, but one of the kind of after effects is massive bruising and swelling, massive.
Yes.
Like no one gets out of this alive.
Yeah.
And my dad said to me, you know what, really good time for you to meditate. Meditation's amazing for healing. And I meditated twice a day, 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the afternoon. I think I was in hospital, 4 days. And then I came home with, bandages and stuff. I did not get even a shadow of bruising, not a shadow of bruising under my eyes, nothing. I also healed in what the surgeon was astonished. He said, look, I know you're a young woman and your healing response is really good, but something is different about this. And the only thing I could put it down to is that I was meditating before the surgery, while I was in hospital, recovering, and then when I went home.
Yeah.
And it was extraordinary. And then another experience I had with that is when I was pregnant with my daughter, I had a condition called placenta previa, which is low-lying placenta. So I was literally bleeding to death. And I was hospitalized and bedbound for 7 weeks before she was born. And in the end, I ended up having emergency cesarean. But again, because I was in hospital and it was a dire, dangerous situation, I decided to go back to something that I knew worked in that scenario. And I meditated twice a day from my hospital bed. And I did, even though I was just in the worst condition, I was able to stabilize my heart rate and my baby's heart rate. I was able to hold on until the emergency Caesar was at a safe enough stage that Lily's lungs and key organs had developed. When she was born, she didn't have to go to ICU, and the babies regulate their heartbeat with the mother.
Yes.
I was using meditation as a tool to regulate my heartbeat and regulate her heartbeat. And my recovery from the cesarean, they say 6 weeks. Mine was 10 days.
Yeah.
And the only thing I can put it down to is meditation. And still I gave it up. I still understand.
It's crazy, isn't it? And, I mean, it's amazing, and it's kind of amazing and miraculous at one level, and actually so simple at another level. Body goes into trauma. When the body's in that flight, fight, and traumatic state, it trims its repertoire. When we relax the nervous system and open the nervous system up, and meditation, Vedic meditation, we can access states of rest 5 times deeper than sleep. So 20 minutes meditation is equivalent to about 3 to 4 hours sleep, general sleep equivalent.
And good sleep? What kind of sleep? Because sometimes you have that.
No, profoundly deep states of rest and relaxation. These smart watches that people are all wearing these days have been such a boon to me over the last couple of years. People are walking in with pre-data on their wrist of sleep. They start meditating, and you can actually see when someone meditates, because they go into this profoundly deep state of rest and relaxation. And then, of course, if someone's meditating twice a day, they're getting an additional, literally 6 to 8 hours additional rest and relaxation into their brain and body every day before they go to bed at night, which means they've rested and relaxed the body. They've done a lot of de-stressing and processing and meditation. Therefore, the brain and body doesn't need to do it at night. Therefore, they start sleeping properly because the brain and body isn't having to do all that work at night. That's what all sleep disturbance is about. I would say over the last 20 years, 50, 60% of the people that have come to learn to meditate with me have had sleep disorder issues.
Which is the worst for aging. Like, it is the number one thing. If you want to look better, feel better, perform better, have your youth markers back, you need to sleep. And so if that's the one benefit of meditation,
and in fact, we actually don't need sleep. We need rest and relaxation. And what we're doing is, at the moment, we're putting so much pressure on sleep to deliver that to us. And it's an unreasonable expectation. With this added demand and dynamic that we're operating in, the paradox is we need more rest and relaxation to process the experience that we're having, but we don't have time. So the question is, how do we get that deep, deep rest and relaxation in a very short period of time? And that's why I call Vedic meditation the Formula One pit stop of meditation. It's in, deep, profoundly deep rest and relaxation. and then back into the dynamics. It's not about sitting around for hours on end. We don't have time for that. We want to get that deep, deep rest and relaxation, turn the adrenals off, flood the body with serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, reactivate the digestive system, the hormonal system, all of that functionality, open up that repertoire. So it's doing all of the things the mind and body is designed to do. Stress, tension, fatigue build is the acceleration into aging, and lack of ease that will translate into dis-ease if we're not getting the rest and relaxation the brain and body needs to do what it's designed to do. Now, back to your experience, what you did with your, as you so elegantly put, your nose job.
Yeah.
What you did very quickly is you got your body out of the trauma experience, because, having surgery and all of that it's a trauma to the body. But what you did through meditation is you started to relax your body very quickly. It started running the blood back into the capillaries and all that outer, whereas most people go through trauma and then they just sit in the trauma. And so the body's still not back into the healing mode. And that's where prolonged healing can take. Whereas when you started meditating, you started relaxing, body out of trauma into the stay and play response, body started letting the blood run out into those areas again. And so it started taking the blood away, which is what bruising is. Your body started taking that blood away from that area and started sending all that nutrition, oxygen-filled blood back to that area, which allowed the repair to happen quicker, sooner rather than later. As a mother, what happens is your priority is your brain, your breathing, your organ function. And then if there's enough energy, then this will then go to the baby. And this is a real issue during pregnancy because, mother must run her own organs first. You and I right now, we've got 6 trillion things per second going on in our minds and body. There's a whole body replacement program underway as you and I are sitting here quietly now. If we were to meet in 9 years' time, the only part of the body that you and I are sitting in today that would be in the room in 9 years' time would be our teeth. Our whole body is physically replaced, at least every single cell in our body, skeleton, bones, brain, everything fully replaced every 9 years. Think about that for a moment. So, that's going on during pregnancy.
And it doesn't have to be a deteriorated version of it. It can actually be an enhanced version. And that's what I love about this whole concept of ageless is you don't have to subscribe that in 10 years' time, you'll be physiologically older. You can actually change the narrative of your cell regeneration.
100%.
And that's magic.
If your digestive system is shut down, if stress is built in the system, your digestive system shut down, then as we're eating and absorbing, then that is the manufacturing area that's delivering the quality of the cell as that cell replacement takes place with skin and bones and biochemicals. If we're stressed, then it delivers a low-grade building block, a replacement building cell. That's what aging is. If we can be relaxed, at ease, the digestive system, then what happens is it delivers a high-grade building block as a replacement cell. And that's the whole basis of either accelerated or decelerated or even reversing of age. And that absolutely comes out of, this is the thing, stress, tension, fatigue builds, and it has this broad case repercussions. And we can start trying to address these, I've got to address the gut, and I've got to address the skin, I've got to address this, I've got to address, it just becomes overwhelming. But if we can actually relax the mind and body, process, de-stress, this incredible organism is designed to do extraordinary things. And one of Maharishi's famous sayings was, water the root and enjoy the fruit. And I love this saying. He was saying, don't try and water the apple, the leaf, the twig, the branch. Don't do that. Don't try and do all of that. Water the root, address the fundamental, and it'll nourish every other aspect. And
I love that.
So this is why we've got to get to that fundamental, relax the mind, settle the mind, relax the body, de-stress, process, out of flight, fight, into stay and play, and watch this incredible organism do what it's designed to do. And of course, then the ultimate response is we come from the inside out. That's where beauty really comes from. When you see someone that's got a relaxed at ease, they shine. And then let's come from the outside in as well, come through the skin and, put nice things on it and, be good to it. So we want to take the inside out and outside in approach. That's the ultimate. And
one of the things I love about you and speaking to you and it's not a diss on other people, but to me, you seem a thoroughly modern voice in what is otherwise an esoteric field. And perhaps that's why there's been a hit or miss with meditation landing as a true pillar of agelessness, vitality, rejuvenation, because it's kind of, for some people, it's in that non-scientific basket or non-modern basket, or, it's too up in the sky. But,
not relevant.
You really land it for me. And you really, the way that you speak about it is really grounded. And I think that that's very appealing for a lot of people who may not have considered meditation. I want you to break down, because we keep alluding to it, but what is Vedic meditation and how does it differ from guided meditation or other styles of meditation that people may have tried and not been able to stick to, or tried and not really got a lot out of? And is it a replacement or is it a conjunction to those kinds of practices too?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just back one little step, and thank you for that lovely, comment. And I really have tried to do that. That's really my thing, is about making this very relevant and approachable. If we're not sleeping properly, or we're not able to be the person we want to be in our relationships, etc., who cares about what else meditation does? Like, it's got to deliver on that,
those metrics.
Level.
Yeah,
absolutely. And then, if you want to explore the other things later, fine. But let's get to the fundamentals of this. This day and age, we need more rest and relaxation to process. And if we're not getting that, then the rest of that's just completely redundant. So,
from a totally selfish point of view, like this episode, more than anything else, it's about what is the ultimate hack to a perfect glow up. And it's meditation, because it's engaging your body to do its thing.
It's designed to do it. We're going inside out. It's the inside out job. We're coming inside out and then meet it with the outside in. Put nice things on, all that. Meet that inside out, outside in. That's where the magic happens. And what people often do is they either do the inside out only or the outside in only, and that's only ever going to deliver limited results. It's when we bring that inside out and outside in, that's where the magic happens. So
you can have your Botox and you can have your kale juice, but don't forget to meditate.
That's right. All of those.
I like things, all of these things, by the way.
Yeah. And that's what I love about this line of knowledge. It's not judgmental at all. There's a lovely saying in this tradition, which is, when faced with a choice, always choose both.
I like that.
And, expansive thinking is always inclusive, not exclusive.
Absolutely.
Consciousness gets constricted and we limit ourselves. Expansive consciousness is inclusive of everything, and that's a much higher state. Just on a point, the reason that I'm here, I'm not based in Byron Bay. I'm not up in the Blue Mountains. I'm here in Paddington, opposite, I deliberately set up my center opposite the pub in Paddington, because I wanted to show people that you could do this right in the thick of life. And I did that very, very deliberately 20 years ago, because I didn't want to be someone floating around in Byron Bay. It's a lovely place to be. And so are the Blue Mountains and elsewhere. But I wanted to show people you could be right in the thick of it.
But I think we've all got a bit of Bali, Byron, Bondi in us. And equally, we've got New York, Sydney, London in us. And I think that, there's no, as you said, there's no judgment, because meditation isn't about who you are or where you are. It's about what the outcome to be.
We want to, the ultimate goal of meditation is to be able to enjoy stillness in the storm. That's the ultimate goal of meditation. Stillness, to be able to enjoy an inner still state while fully engaged in dynamic activity, right in the thick of life, emerged, exploring the full spectrum of emotion, mental, physical, and emotional capability. That's the ultimate goal. And that's what we're looking to be able to do and to answer your question, your second question is, how is this different? If you think of the mind, top of the mind, very busy, wavy, active level of the mind, thinking, planning, projecting, worrying, scenario building, we spend a lot of time up here on the surface.
Yeah, and that loop, monkey mind.
That's right. And so we're bouncing around here all the time. Bottom of the mind's that deep, inner, quiet, relaxed, at ease state of the mind. So most people spend most of their time up here, and they've forgotten, they can't even remember. Lots of people can't even remember accessing this state. And they certainly don't know how to access it, on a daily basis. And so the question is really, the ultimate premise of meditation is, how do we get the mind to go from here to there? That's what meditation's about. And most people make the mistake of thinking, oh, let me see if I can stop thinking and force my mind to stop thinking and don't think about this and don't think about that. As soon as you try to stop the mind doing that, it recoils against that experience. And in fact, it becomes even more active. And if you've ever tried to stop your mind thinking, you'll know it can't be done.
Don't think about the pink elephant. Don't think about
that's right. Yeah, whatever you do, don't think about the pink elephant. Don't think about thinking about the pink elephant, and stop thinking about trying to stop thinking about trying to stop. Send yourself mad. So the question really is, the simplicity of meditation is, how do I get the mind to go from here to there? When the mind's bouncing around here, it's what I call conscious snorkeling. We're doing this all of the time. What we want to learn how to do is conscious scuba dive. This is where all the benefits of meditation come.
I find it so hard when I'm getting back into my practice, and I came and saw you a few weeks ago to kind of fine tune my practice, is just stopping and sitting down for 20 minutes is a challenge, much less going into a meditative state. And one of the things that I liked about you recalibrating my practice was, it doesn't all have to be 20 minutes of quality meditation. You don't take that pressure off yourself. It's not an action. It's not a goal.
That's right. And that's the mistake that people make. They go and go, right, I've got to get my mind from here and I've got to drive it into that state. And again, no one can do that. And that's the mistake that people make, is then they try and do that. It doesn't work. And they go, well, I can't meditate. And that's because they haven't really understood what meditation is and how to trigger that response. So now there are lots of apps around these days, and people often say to me, you must hate those apps. And I say, no, I love those apps, because at 3 o'clock in the morning when someone can't sleep, they'll download something like Headspace or Calm or Insight Timer, or Smiling Minds is wonderful for kids. And, for your listeners, that's a very good one. And I'm a big fan of these, actually. They only turned up around 5 years ago. I've been teaching for 20 years. And these things only turned up about 5 years ago. And what they'll do is give someone a starting point, and they'll give them a little taster of what might be possible. And for that, I think that's wonderful.
And they're almost like the mantra, right? Because the mantra, which is key to Vedic meditation and transcendental meditation, which is what I learned, which is similar. Those apps and those, ASMR or guided meditations, that kind of serves as the vehicle that's going to guide you down. And that's what a mantra is, right? A vehicle to help.
Yeah, that's right. And so, what the guided meditations will do, if you, go to a quiet room and lie down somewhere and, get everything quiet and then let someone kind of take you through that. If you spend enough time, maybe 45 minutes, an hour or something, what generally happens is it'll take the mind from here and it'll move it over here on that vertical plane. So now we're not thinking about, paying the bills and the kids and the work, and we're thinking about, the beautiful beach scene or the dolphins or the valley. We're thinking of something nice, but actually we're still on this surface level.
Yeah.
Now, if you do it for long enough, then what you'll start to do is get this vertical movement. You'll eventually start to get this. Now, that's where the benefit will actually
And that, for the people who are listening, not watching, is when you've sunk down to the lower levels of...
Sorry, I didn't realize it was just an audio. So when the mind goes from the surface level, then it will start to move through that vertical plane. You'll start to get a little bit of this. That's actually where the benefit comes. Now, where Vedic meditation is a little bit different is we use a mantra. A mantra is a manas, mind, tra, vehicle, mind vehicle. That's what a mantra is. So tra is where we get our English word truck from. It's a mind truck.
Wow.
It's a vehicle for mind. No different from a lift in a building is a vehicle designed to take us through the vertical plane of a building. A mantra is a mind vehicle designed to take the mind through the vertical plane of consciousness. So in Vedic meditation, we take a mantra there, what we specifically refer to as bija mantra. Bija means a seed mantra. It has no meaning. And that's very important, actually. It's a sound.
I didn't know my seed mantra had no meaning. I thought it had some profound Vedic meaning.
It's a sound without meaning. In fact, that's why it works, because if it had a meaning, the mind would immediately start contemplating and thinking about the meaning, which would trap the mind on the surface level. Because it's a sound without meaning, that has a very particular resonance or vibration to it that's intrinsically charming to the mind is naturally drawn towards it. And because it doesn't have a meaning, the mind engages with it. And what it will do is automatically slip or refine. As it refines or slips, it becomes more subtle, therefore more charming. Therefore, the mind becomes more interested. Therefore, it engages and the mantra slips again. And so all of a sudden, that mantra starts taking the mind, it guides the mind. And it's no different from a sinker on the end of a fishing line. A sinker on the end of a fishing line is the orientating device. It's the device that takes the line to the bottom of the river or the ocean.
And so can I ask you, you have to be given this mantra, right? So it's seeded by a teacher after you've learned the principles of it. And then how do they choose this for you? And is everyone's mantra different?
Yeah, so there's in the tradition that I teach from. So I learned from my teacher, Tom, who learned from Maharishi, who learned from that gentleman there, Swami Brahmananda Saraswati, who learned from their teacher, who learned from their teacher. There's a set of mantras that have been passed down through the tradition. And based on criteria, it's a very simple process, but someone gets fitted for a mantra. No different. You go to the shoe shop. That little machine they've got that they go like that and like that. And they say, right, you're a size, 8.5 F. You get fitted for it. They go out the back, they get the shoe. At that point, it's got a standard element to it. But as soon as you put your foot into that shoe and start walking around, it starts molding to the contours of your particular foot. So just like that, there's a set of mantras, base set of about 18 mantras in our tradition. And based on some criteria, we select that mantra. It's very simple. And then we pass that on. The three things when I teach people to meditate, it's what I call teaching people how to ride the meditation bike. So when someone's learning to ride a bike, they need to be fitted for the right size bike. They need someone to hold the back of the bike while they get their balance, and they need some correct instruction. Meditation is exactly the same. Correct mantra, passed on correctly with correct instruction. Meditation is ridiculously simple, but we need to get those three things in place. And that's what I teach, and the tradition that I've taught has been doing that for over 5,000 years. And that's why we correct mantra, passed on correctly with correct instruction, not complicated. If we don't get those three things in place, it can become a complete, and excuse the pun, but a minefield.
Tell me, why do you do it twice? Why in Vedic meditation and TM, and do you talk about twice a day? And when are the optimal times for those twice a day things to happen?
Look, again, the pressures of day-to-day life and the dynamics we're living in, we need more rest and relaxation to process our experience, but we don't have time. So that 20 minutes in the morning. And so what someone might do if they're an exerciser, they might hop up, exercise, shower, 20 minutes meditation, brekkie, something like that. Or if they're not exercising, hop up, jump in the shower, get sleep chemistry out of the brain, sit for 20 minutes, brekkie into the day. For instance, parents that have got little kids, they might get them up and into the day and off to school. I know a lot of parents that will drop the kids, back in the old days when we dropped our kids at school. Right. They'll then come back to the car, sit in the car and meditate. And that's what I love about our practice. You can do it in the car, not while you're sitting at a set of red lights, but, you can do it in the car or on public transport. I know a lot of people that meditate on, again, back in the old days, on the train to work or the bus to work, or they'd sit in the boardroom.
My dad always says that to me. He goes, I'm so practiced at it that I can just start meditating right now, and he can get into that alpha state just like mid-conversation, close his eyes, set his body and say his mantra and slip down, because he's got those years, many, many years of practice.
That's it. But a novice,
I don't have that.
I've seen people within the week that I'm teaching, they'll start meditating on the bus or on the train, or quite comfortably. And that's the beauty of it. When the mind starts to go into those deeper states, the mantra acts as the vehicle to gently take the mind in that direction. What happens is, as the mind goes in, the body relaxes. We turn off all the adrenaline, noradrenaline, flight, fight chemistry, turn on the serotonin, dopamine, that deep, profoundly deep state of relaxation starts to come to the body. And there's two critical things in meditation. One, the mind settling into that deep state, the body relaxing, and the other one is the body gently processing or laundering the stress and tension out of the fabric of the nervous system. And meditation is about understanding that relationship between the mind and body, and allowing those two things to happen, because the mind wants to go deep and the body wants to put the garbage out. And there's actually this beautiful little dance between the two. And when you understand that and know how to engage with that willingly, that's when the magic of meditation starts to take place. And it's very simple, but we need the correct mantra. We need it passed on correctly with correct instruction. And the apps are a great place to start. And I'm getting a lot of people that have started there. They've engaged, they can see the benefits. And then what I do is take people into that next level. But they are a wonderful place to start. And I recommend Headspace, Calm, Insight Timer, Smiling Minds. They're the four that I recommend. If you want to get a start and take a first step, start there. And then, as with all things, there's layers, there's grades in all things. And if we want to really establish a deep practice, then we need to get instruction. That's where the whole thing goes to next level. But these are a great place to start.
It's such a great explanation. I want to just finish up by going back to when I asked you to talk to us about the benefits of physiological aging, but I also want to go back to the benefits of Vedic meditation in dealing with the things that could potentially trip us up in the bigger disease play. So releasing old trauma, old injury, and disease in the body. How does Vedic meditation work on the mental and possibly blocked out or things that we've chosen to just ride roughshod over, and then it catches up with you in the form of various other diseases and aging?
Look, it's as simple as this, Baha. Here, when I'm sitting here now, I can see that carpet in my peripheral, and I can see everything in front of me, right, like this full spectrum. Now, if someone else was doing this to me, it wasn't me, but if someone started doing this, now I've lost the carpet, I've lost that doorway, I've lost that like this, and I'm going like this. Now I'm still attending to you, and I don't really realize, but I've lost all that information. And now it's just kind of you and me and the computer, or you and me like this. And we've all heard that term, that person, they've got blinkers on. Mm-hmm. And this is what stress, tension, and fatigue does. It trims our repertoire mentally, physically, emotionally. And as that happens, we miss and lose information. Back to that idea of the hierarchy of needs in the nervous system.
Yes.
And someone in that, in that modality. Now I can either experience you or I can experience that part of the room, but I've got to give up you in order to experience that. Then I've got to give up that to attend to you. It's this exclusive experience. This world that we're living in is accelerating our conscious constriction. We are being systematically compressed on a daily basis. It's trimming our mental, physical, and emotional repertoire. And that opens us up to the non-functionality of mentally, physically, and emotionally, which is the basis of all lack of ease that will graduate into dis-ease. unless we open that repertoire up again. What opens that repertoire up is deep rest and relaxation, turning off the adrenals, getting out of the flight fight into stay and play. Interestingly enough, 75 to 80% of all cancer presents in the digestive system, the reproductive system, and the memory center of the brain. We're back to those three again. You and I are producing neoplasm right now. That's the basis of cancer. But when our repertoire is broad, neoplasm's on the hit list. And if that starts presenting in, levels that are inappropriate, this magnificent immune system identifies it, goes in, eliminates it, and gets it out of the system. Consciousness constricts far enough, neoplasm falls off the list, and that thing goes round and round the body and goes unchecked. We've all had the experience where we've had a friend or someone we know, and we've heard this story. John, most wonderful person, so giving all of this, and he wasn't feeling well one day, went and had a check, and now he's got stage 4 cancer. How the hell did that happen? How did he not know that was going on in his body? And it's no different from me sitting here with that. I cannot see that fist. It is not in my awareness. As soon as I do this, it's in my awareness, and I'm going to address it. This is the challenge in this day and age. We've got to work out how to open our conscious repertoire at a greater rate than it's been compressed. That's the challenge of this age. And this is what,
if you've not been convinced that meditation is for you, this is, I love once again that, you've spoken to the science of it, the physiological, the emotional, the neurological benefits of having some form of meditation practice as part of the pillars of vitality, rejuvenation, and wellness. You just have to. You just have to.
It's the inside out. It's, we've got to come inside out. We've got to come from the inside out and the outside in, and that's good food and, and nourishing the skin and the body from the outside in. That's the outside work. And there's a lot of, we've really researched that, and Western science is very much about that. We add on that inside out, and that's where the magic happens. You get that inside out, meeting the outside in, put those together. What can happen out of that is just absolutely extraordinary.
Well, it's wonderful to sit here with my friend from primary school. If I close my eyes, I can actually see you in the front row of our school photo being taken. I can actually visualize you. And I think that's another incredible thing about memory. And if you close your eyes, you can actually transport yourself and be right back there. And it's such an honor and a pleasure to host you on today's episode to talk about your journey and what you've been able to teach so many people. And I'm really glad, selfishly for me, that you've reminded me what a powerful tool meditation is in my own journey, and to pass that on to my daughter, and also to everyone who's listening and watching today. Thank you so much, Tim. It's such a joy.
A real pleasure, Bahar. And I think I had a lot more hair in that photograph than I than I do now. But I remember those days too, and you were such an incredible young woman, even age 10, 11. I remember the strength of your feminine, and you were a real powerhouse aged 11. And I was just a shy little kind of white-haired boy, and you were quite intimidating to me aged 11, 12. But I remember you very fondly, and remembering how clear you were about who you were and what you were doing as a young woman. It's great to see that translate into your womanhood and the wonderful work that you're doing. And it is such a joy to sit here all these years later and share this experience together.
I look forward to having you back on the show. I feel like there's so much more we can unpack. And I'm excited to invite everyone who's listening to this to consider adding meditation into their ageless ritual.
Yeah, wonderful. Great. Such a pleasure. Thanks, Bahar.
Thank you so much. Lovely to see you.
Bye for now.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please share and rate this episode. I'd love that.